Divine misunderstanding. Lieutenant Jonas Fletcher had never been good with first impressions. During his academy graduation, he'd tripped walking across the stage. At his first diplomatic briefing, he'd accidentally called the Martian ambassador Your Majesty instead of Your Excellence. Now standing in the crystalline corridors of the Luminar mothership Celestial Harmony, he was pretty sure he was about to add another spectacular failure to his resume. Remember, Fletcher, Commander Thorne's voice crackled through his earpiece. The Luminars are extremely formal. Ancient protocols, cosmic spirituality, that sort of thing. Don't touch anything, don't interrupt any ceremonies, and for the love of all that's holy, think before you speak. Got it, sir, Jonas whispered back, adjusting his dress uniform for the third time. The fabric felt wrong against his skin, too stiff and ceremonial. He was used to combat gear and field rations, not diplomatic missions to mysterious alien empires that controlled half the Andromeda spiral. The escort, a tall, graceful being with skin that seemed to contain entire nebulae, gestured for him to follow. The Luminar's movements were liquid poetry, each step perfectly measured and somehow musical. Jonas felt like a caffeinated gorilla by comparison. They walked through corridors that defied physics, walls curving impossible geometries, while floors remained perfectly level. Soft harmonics emanated from everywhere and nowhere, creating an atmosphere of profound reverence. Jonas tried not to gawk, but the ceiling displayed a real-time view of swirling galaxies that made his head spin. The High Priestess awaits in the Chamber of Celestial Convergence, his escort said, voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. You arrive during the sacred choosing. Most auspicious. Jonas nodded, having no idea what that meant but not wanting to ask. The briefing materials had been frustratingly vague about Luminar customs, filled with phrases like cosmically significant and divinely ordained that told him absolutely nothing useful. They approached massive doors that seemed to be carved from a single pearl the size of a small building. Strange symbols pulsed along their surface in rhythm with Jonas's heartbeat, which was unsettling on multiple levels. The doors opened without sound, revealing a chamber that took his breath away. The room was vast, its ceiling lost in swirling mists of light. Floating platforms of crystalline material hung at various heights connected by bridges of pure energy. The air shimmered with particles that might have been stardust or might have been something far more exotic. At the center of it all, on a raised dais surrounded by orbiting moons of soft radiance, a figure danced. Jonas's brain promptly forgot how to function. The High Priestess Ziralith moved with the fluid grace of water and the commanding presence of a supernova. Her form was humanoid but perfected, tall and elegant with skin that shifted between pearl and starlight. Her hair flowed like liquid mercury shot through with threads of pure energy, and her eyes held the depth of cosmic voids. She wore robes that seemed woven from Aurora Borealis itself, colors shifting and dancing with each movement. But it was the dance that truly captivated him. She moved as if gravity was merely a suggestion, her feet barely touching the crystal platform as she traced complex patterns in the air. Her hands wove invisible tapestries while her body told stories in a language older than words. Light responded to her movements, reality itself seeming to bend around her choreography. Jonas stood transfixed, his mouth slightly open, completely unaware that he'd wandered several feet into the chamber. The escort made a soft sound of alarm, but Jonas didn't hear it. He was lost in the impossible beauty of what he was witnessing. The dance reached a crescendo, and Ziralith spun in a final magnificent pirouette that sent cascades of light spiraling outward like galaxy arms. As she completed the movement, her eyes met Jonas's across the chamber. Time stopped. In that moment of perfect silence, with stardust still swirling around them and the weight of the cosmos pressing down on the chamber, Jonas did what he always did when nervous. He spoke without thinking. Holy stars, he breathed, his voice carrying clearly in the acoustically perfect chamber. You're like a goddess descended from heaven itself. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every luminar in the chamber, and Jonas suddenly realized there were dozens of them, floating on various platforms around the room's perimeter, went perfectly still. The soft harmonics that had been playing cut off as if someone had pulled a cosmic plug. Even the swirling lights seemed to pause in their eternal dance. Zirleth's eyes widened, their cosmic depths suddenly blazing with something that might have been recognition, or might have been shock. She raised one perfect hand to her throat, where a pendant of crystallized starlight began to pulse with urgent energy. "The words," she whispered, her voice carrying impossible distances. "He speaks the recognition." Jonas felt a growing sense that he'd made a terrible mistake, but before he could apologize or explain or run away screaming, the chamber erupted in activity. Luminars began to glow brighter, their skin taking on the intensity of distant suns. Musical tones rang out, not the gentle harmonics from before, but something triumphant and cosmic. "High Priestess," came a deep voice from one of the platforms. A large luminar with elaborate tattoos covering his arms materialized beside the dais. "Surely this cannot be. The human cannot understand the sacred choosing. It must be coincidence." Zirleth descended from her platform, but her feet never touched the ground. She floated toward Jonas with the inexorable approach of a cosmic event, her eyes never leaving his face. As she drew closer, Jonas realized she was even more breathtaking up close, her presence radiating a kind of gentle power that made his knees feel unreliable. "Vessel Singer Koran," she said without looking away from Jonas. "The cosmos does not deal in coincidence. The sacred choosing has been performed for 3 cycles, and none have spoken the recognition. Yet this being, this human, sees truth where others see only ceremony." She stopped just arm's length away from Jonas, close enough that he could see the tiny stars that seemed to dance in her hair, close enough to smell something like ozone and night-blooming flowers. "You called me goddess," she said softly. "In our tongue, in our way, with words that should be impossible for your kind to know. Tell me, starborn one, what is your name?" Jonas's throat felt dry as cosmic dust. "Lieutenant Jonas Fletcher, ma'am. I mean, Your Holiness? I'm sorry, I don't know the proper address. I'm here for the diplomatic exchange between the Terran, Federation, and the Luminar Empire. I really didn't mean to interrupt your ceremony, I was just—" She raised a hand, and he fell silent immediately. "Jonas Fletcher," she repeated, as if tasting the syllables. "The prophecies speak of one who would come from the younger races, who would see past the veil of flesh to recognize the divine spark within. They speak of the chosen consort, he who would stand beside the High Priestess in the trials to come." Jonas felt the blood drain from his face. "I'm sorry, consort." Zirleth turned to address the assembled luminars, her voice carrying the authority of solar winds. "Behold, the recognition has been given. The sacred choosing is complete. The cosmos has provided our divine partner in the hour of our greatest need." The chamber erupted in what could only be described as controlled chaos. Some luminars began singing in harmonies that made the crystal walls resonate. Others flickered between states of matter, their excitement causing them to phase partially out of reality. Koran, the tattooed luminar, looked like he'd swallowed a small moon. "High Priestess," Koran said carefully, "perhaps we should consider—" "There is nothing to consider," Zirleth declared. "The ritual was witnessed. The words were spoken. The divine will has been made manifest." She turned back to Jonas, and her expression softened slightly. "Fear not, chosen one. Though the path ahead is clouded with shadow, together we shall bring light to the darkness." Jonas opened his mouth to explain that this was all a terrible misunderstanding, that he was just a soldier who'd said the first thing that popped into his head, that he had absolutely no qualifications for being anyone's cosmic anything. But, before he could speak, Zirleth placed her hand gently on his cheek. The touch sent electricity through his entire nervous system. For a moment he could swear he saw the universe through her eyes, vast, interconnected, beautiful beyond description. Then the sensation faded, leaving him dizzy and more confused than ever. "Rest now, my chosen," she said with infinite gentleness. "Tomorrow, we begin preparation for the trials ahead. The shadow fleet of War Prime Zelthak approaches our borders, and the very existence of the Luminar Empire hangs in the balance. But with you beside me, I have hope that we shall prevail, As attendants appeared to escort Jonas to what he was informed would be his consort quarters, he managed to catch his escort's attention. "Quick question," he whispered desperately. "What exactly does a divine consort do?" The Luminar's expression suggested this was roughly equivalent to asking what stars were for. "The divine consort stands as equal to the high priestess in all things," came the reply. "Together, you shall lead our people through the coming darkness, command our fleets, guide our spirits, and unite the cosmos under the banner of light." Jonas felt his knees go weak. Through his earpiece, he could hear Commander Thorne's voice growing increasingly frantic as the implications of the situation became clear. "Fletcher? Fletcher, what the hell is happening over there? Our diplomatic scanners are going crazy. It looks like they're preparing some kind of coronation ceremony." Jonas closed his eyes and wondered if it was too late to request a transfer to the nice, safe, predictable job of bomb disposal. Behind him, High Priestess Ziraleth watched his retreating form with eyes full of starlight and something that might have been hope. The cosmos had provided just as the ancient prophecies foretold. She only hoped her chosen consort would survive what was coming. Cosmic consequences. Jonas Fletcher woke up in what could only be described as a bedroom designed by someone who'd never seen a bedroom but had heard one described by a poet having a fever dream. The walls pulsed with gentle bioluminescence. The bed was a floating platform of crystallized comfort that responded to his thoughts, and the ceiling displayed what appeared to be live footage of 3 different nebulae having an argument. "Good morning, divine consort," chirped a voice from somewhere near his left ear. "Your presence is requested in the war chamber. Also, would you prefer your morning sustenance in liquid, solid, or energy form?" Jonas sat up, immediately regretting it as the room spun slightly. "Coffee," he croaked. "Just normal coffee, please." There was a pause. "Analyzing request. Coffee. Stimulant beverage from Terra. Preparing approximation using available cosmic essences." A floating tray materialized beside him, bearing a cup that contained something brown and steaming. Jonas took a cautious sip and immediately wished he hadn't. It tasted like someone had dissolved an entire star in liquid regret. "Thank you," he managed, setting the cup aside. "That's definitely coffee adjacent." He stumbled toward what he hoped was a bathroom, guided by the helpful room AI that kept offering to adjust his molecular harmony for optimal morning readiness. The mirror showed him looking exactly like what he was, a thoroughly confused human who'd accidentally become an alien god emperor through spectacular social incompetence. 20 minutes later, dressed in robes that the room assured him were cosmically appropriate for one of his divine station, Jonas made his way through corridors that seemed to rearrange themselves helpfully as he walked. Luminars he passed bowed deeply, their skin flickering with respectful light patterns that made him feel like an imposter wearing a costume made of other people's expectations. The war chamber was a sphere of pure energy, suspended in the heart of the ship, its walls displaying real-time tactical information from across the galaxy. As Jonas entered, the assembled Luminars turned toward him with expressions ranging from reverent to deeply skeptical. High Priestess Ziraleth stood at the center, her presence commanding even among beings of cosmic power. Today her robes seemed woven from the aurora of distant worlds, and her hair moved as if touched by solar winds. She turned as he approached, and Jonas felt that same electric connection he'd experienced the day before. "My chosen," she said warmly, though Jonas caught the slight uncertainty in her voice. "Come, see what threatens our realm." The chamber's displays shifted, showing the approach of what could only be described as a fleet of nightmares. Dark ships that seemed to devour light itself, moving in formations that hurt to look at directly. At their head was a massive vessel that looked like someone had convinced a black hole to take ship form. "War Prime Zelthak," announced vessel singer Koran, his tattoos pulsing with agitated energy. His shadow fleet numbers in the thousands. They have already consumed 7 systems, turning their light into darkness eternal. Jonas studied the display, his military training automatically, analyzing the tactical situation. The enemy formation was impressive but oddly rigid, moving in perfect geometric patterns that suggested extreme discipline but little flexibility. "What do they want?" he asked. The question seemed to surprise everyone. Zeraleth exchanged glances with her advisors before answering. Want? They are creatures of the void, my chosen. They exist only to extinguish light, to return the cosmos to primordial darkness. They do not want. They simply unmake. Jonas frowned. Everyone wants something. Resources, territory, revenge, ideology. There's always a reason. He pointed at the display. Look at their formation. It's ceremonial, ritualistic. They're not just conquering, they're performing. A new voice spoke from the chamber's periphery. Fascinating observation, divine consort. Jonas turned to see what appeared to be a luminar, who'd been assembled from spare parts and cosmic debris. Half of his body flickered between states of matter. Mechanical augmentations covered his arms, and his eyes were replaced with what looked like miniature galaxies. Tech Savant Quirin, Zeraleth said by way of introduction, our chief researcher of impossible things. Quirin floated closer, his mechanical parts whirring softly. I have studied Zelthak's forces for 3 cycles. Your insight intrigues me. Divine consort. Perhaps their destruction is not random but follows patterns we have not recognized. Could we capture one of their ships? Jonas asked. Study their technology? Interrogate prisoners? The suggestion created an uncomfortable silence. Koran's expression suggested Jonas had just proposed dancing naked through a supernova. Divine consort, Koran said carefully. The Shadow Fleet does not take prisoners, nor do they leave survivors to study their methods. They are antithesis to all life and light. Right, but Jonas paused, realizing everyone was staring at him with that particular expression reserved for people who'd just said something either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. What? Zeraleth moved closer, her eyes bright with something that might have been excitement or concern. My chosen, your words carry wisdom beyond their surface. To capture the darkness, to study the void itself, it is either profound strategy or divine madness. Probably madness, Jonas admitted. But in my experience, crazy plans work about half the time and conventional plans work about a quarter of the time, so the math favors crazy. Quirin made a sound like a delighted mechanical wail. Divine mathematics, I must record this wisdom. Before Jonas could explain that he'd made those statistics up entirely, alarms began ringing throughout the chamber. The displays flickered. To show the Shadow Fleet had suddenly accelerated, their approach time cut from days to hours. They come, Zeraleth announced, her voice carrying across the ship's communication systems. All vessels to battle stations. Prepare for the final convergence. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity that Jonas barely understood. He found himself on the bridge of the Celestial Harmony, surrounded by luminars who kept asking him for divine guidance while he tried to figure out what all the glowing buttons did. Divine consort, said the ship's captain, a ethereal being whose skin contained what appeared to be an entire solar system. The enemy approaches our forward position. Your orders. Jonas looked at the tactical display, his human military training, wrestling with alien technology and cosmic warfare concepts. The Luminar fleet was arranged in a beautiful symmetrical formation that would have made any parade ground instructor weep with joy. It was also, Jonas realized, tactically insane. Why are we all bunched up like this? He asked. It is the traditional formation of cosmic harmony, the captain replied. Each ship supports the others, creating a perfect mandala of defensive light. Right. But what happens if they hit the center? The question seemed to break something in the captain's brain. But the formation is perfect. It has been used for millennia. Jonas rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of cosmic expectations pressing down on him. Through the view screen, he could see the Shadow Fleet approaching like a tide of aggressive darkness. Okay, he said slowly. New plan. Scatter the fleet. I want ships moving randomly, unpredictably. No patterns, no formations, just chaos. The bridge went silent except for the hum of cosmic engines and the sound of several luminars experiencing existential crisis simultaneously. Divine consort, Zeraleth said gently. Chaos is the realm of darkness. We are beings of order, of harmony, of Of getting slaughtered if we stay in pretty formations, Jonas interrupted, then immediately felt bad for raising his voice to someone who could probably turn him into a small constellation. I'm sorry, but look at their attack pattern. They're designed to hit organized formations. Their weapons are synchronized for geometric targets. He pointed at the display where the Shadow Fleet was arranging itself into attack formation. See how they're adjusting? They expect us to fight like we have for millennia. But what if we don't? Quirin's mechanical parts whirred excitedly. Tactical unpredictability. Cosmic chaos as strategy. Divine consort, you propose to fight darkness with... More darkness? No, Jonas said, surprising himself with his certainty. I propose to fight rigid darkness with flexible light. Same light, different dance. Ziraleth studied him for a long moment, her cosmic eyes searching his face. Finally, she nodded. Give the order, she told the captain. Scatter the fleet. Let chaos be our formation. What followed was the most beautiful disaster Jonas had ever witnessed. The Luminar fleet broke apart like a symphony deciding to become jazz, ships darting in seemingly random directions, while the Shadow Fleet's perfectly coordinated attacks hit empty space. The enemy's rigid formations couldn't adapt to the constant motion, their synchronized weapons firing at targets that were no longer there. But the Luminars were struggling too. Thousands of years of coordinated battle doctrine couldn't be unlearned in minutes. Ships collided with each other, weapons fired at friendly targets, and several vessels accidentally phased into dimensions that didn't technically exist. This is madness, Karan reported from his station. We've lost 17 ships to friendly fire and dimensional displacement. How many has the enemy destroyed? Jonas asked. Karan checked his instruments, then double-checked them. None, Divine Consort. The Shadow Fleet has not successfully targeted a single vessel. Jonas felt a grim smile crossing his face. Then we're winning. The battle raged for hours, a cosmic dance between order and chaos, darkness and scattered light. Gradually, the Luminar crews began to adapt, finding rhythm in the randomness. They started moving like schools of luminous fish, responding to each other without rigid coordination. And slowly, inevitably, the Shadow Fleet began to falter. Their perfect formations became liabilities as Luminar ships struck from unexpected angles. Their synchronized weapons couldn't track targets that moved like living things rather than geometric abstractions. When Zelthak's flagship finally broke apart in a cascade of imploding darkness, the remaining shadow vessels simply stopped. Without their war primes' controlling presence, they hung motionless in space like abandoned puppets. Victory, Ziraleth announced, her voice carrying wonder and exhaustion in equal measure. The darkness retreats. Jonas collapsed into what he really hoped was a chair, and not some kind of cosmic entity taking a break. Around him, the bridge crew were celebrating in ways that involved temporary transcendence to higher dimensional states. Divine Consort. Quirin appeared beside him, his mechanical parts now glowing with what appeared to be satisfaction. Your tactical philosophy has revolutionized our understanding of cosmic warfare. I must document everything for the historical archives. Just write down, sometimes the best formation is no formation, Jonas said wearily. And maybe add something about the importance of not getting too attached to tradition when people are shooting at you. Ziraleth approached, her presence somehow both cosmic and intimate. My chosen, she said softly. You have saved not just our empire, but our understanding of ourselves. We had become so focused on perfection that we forgot the beauty of improvisation. Jonas looked up at her, this impossible being who'd mistaken his social awkwardness for divine wisdom. I'm not actually chosen by the cosmos, you know. I'm just a guy who speaks before he thinks and got really, really lucky. She smiled, and for a moment she looked less like a cosmic goddess and more like someone who'd just discovered something wonderful. Perhaps, she said. That is exactly what the cosmos was looking for. From somewhere across the bridge, Commander, Thorne's voice crackled through Jonas's earpiece. Fletcher, do you copy? What's your status? The diplomatic corps is having collective heart failure, and Admiral Reeves wants to know if we're at war or engaged or what the hell is happening. Jonas looked around at the celebrating luminars, at Ziraleth's starlight smile, at the displays, showing the scattered remnants of the Shadow Fleet, and at his own reflection in a cosmic crystal that showed him wearing robes of living light. "Tell the Admiral," he said into his comm, "that diplomacy is proceeding normally. Also, I might be a little late getting home." Cyrilleth laughed, a sound like solar wind through crystal chimes, and Jonas realized that maybe being cosmically mistaken for someone important wasn't the worst thing that could happen to a guy. After all, the universe was a big place, full of rigid formations just waiting for someone chaotic enough to break them apart.